All right, so hey everybody. Today we are kicking off the phase one project, which is super exciting. I'm very excited to see what you all come up with. A couple things to note on the homeroom. I've actually linked a guidelines doc. So throughout this and next week, whenever we talk about the project, it will likely come off this guidelines doc. So in the guidelines doc, there is a good bit, and this also is shared across all of my cohorts that are doing this project at the same time. So you'll see like my other cohort who is actually presenting later today. Additional plug for that if you would like to see. There's only going to be a couple presentations because they're a very small cohort. But if you're interested to see a presentation live, that will happen tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern. So if anyone has time, I think it's a good idea to just see. You can ask questions as well. So just as dates are here, I won't go very in depth into this, but yeah, I'll be going through a lot of what's on this doc in just a second. Okay, I've also updated this stuff. One other thing to note on the resources Google Drive, I've added a homeroom archive. So if I think that there's something that I note in the homeroom that has to do with like prioritizing material or something that you might want to refer back to in the future, I'm going to just keep adding on to this doc over here. So this was the archive from last week. So if you ever want to look back and see what was on the homeroom, it'll all be here. If you want to see other cohorts, they're there as well. This guidelines doc is also in the phase one folder. So it is in the phase one folder over here. So if you ever want to refer back to it, I do have some Git instructions that I will be going through. If you want to refer to it for your future projects, you can do that as well. All right, I have also made some notes about topics 8, 9, and 10. Feel free to read. Those are coming out later this week. All right, but with the phase one project, to read up about the phase one project, see the project prompt, it is over here. You'll see an overview, which I'll talk about a little bit. More importantly, at the bottom, you'll see a rubric. So if you're concerned about like, oh, is this doing enough? Am I missing something from my project? It is on the rubric over here. So feel free to refer to that. Also, I've moved all the project related things to the top of the phase one content. So feel free to look at that. Blog posts, don't worry about for now. I'll talk about blog posts after we finish this project. And then there are some other project resources if you want to check it out. These are ones provided by Flatiron School. I'm not going to go through them, but it's up to you to go and check them out if you would like. All of my guidelines are on the guidelines doc. Okay, so what is this project? It's a pretty interesting one. The overview is you're using EDA, exploratory data analysis, to generate insights for a business stakeholder. So very exciting. The business problem that we have here is we are sourced by Microsoft. Because we're seeing a lot of companies make their own original video content, you know, now I think there's like what 10 plus different streaming services, and a lot of them are making their own content. Microsoft wants to get it on the front. So the business problem that you're tasked with tackling is that they've decided to create a new movie studio, and they want you to explore what types of films are currently doing best at the box office. You must then translate those findings into actionable insights that the head of Microsoft's new movie studio can use to help decide what kinds of films to create. As Justin was talking about right before the recording, yes, box office, not active right now, right? Like movie theaters haven't been open in the past year. So this part, it's really up to your interpretation. It's up to you to decide on like what doing best means. In the folder zip data, and I'll talk about it a little bit, there is a provided data file. And in that data file, in that data folder, there are 11 CSV files. So your job is to take those 11 CSV files, clean all the data out, and come up with some insights for Microsoft. Note about that, you don't have to use all 11 tables. I would say please try and use at least 4 of them, but you don't have to use all of them. Additionally, later this week, we'll be talking about how to use APIs and web scrape for additional data. So if you don't want to deal with that data, several reasons why you might not want to deal with it is messy on purpose. And also it is a little bit outdated. The data I think is from 2 years ago. So if you want more updated data, you can choose to not use any of these data sets and find your own data. Or maybe you use a mix of both. I will say finding your own additional data is definitely optional. So only do so if you and your teammates decide to do so, but it's not necessary. These data sets, if you choose to work on these data sets, they are messy. So a lot of your time will be spent cleaning within pandas, feature engineering within pandas as well. Maybe you're doing statistical analysis and then ultimately creating visualizations. If you choose to go to get your own data route, which you can after we talk about it on Thursday, Friday. If you choose to do that, there will probably be a little bit less cleaning, but the hard part would be figuring out how to use the API or web scrape for your data. So pick your poison on what kind of data you want to use, but you are going to be constrained by this business problem. Questions about the prompt to start. I'm going to get into more details. All right. So in terms of deliverables, a GitHub repository, which I'm actually going to walk you all through creating right after we finish talking about the details of the project. A Jupyter notebook, which can be one or multiple Jupyter notebooks. I'll talk about what that means in a little bit as well. And also a non-technical presentation. So you and your project partner or partners will be giving a presentation about your project, with your audience being the hit of Microsoft's new movie studio next Friday. So on the, I want to say 11th. Yeah, so presentation will be on the 11th. So you and your project partner will be giving the presentation on all of your insights on the 11th. So remember that that is an important deliverable. Okay. So you can read all of these key points on your own. There's also some templates and examples if you want to go off that. But I'm going to walk us through how we create our project repository to set it up the best way to collaborate with others. So before I get into that, any questions about the prompt or the deliverables or like anything about that? With regards to the presentation, I'm going to do a session on creating this presentation and what things you should keep in mind. I'll also be providing you all with some example presentations and the presentation template. They're actually already on the guidelines doc. That will happen at one of the study group sessions next week. Okay, so here, deliverables, we have a GitHub repository with Jupyter notebooks, PDFs, your README, and README is another thing I'll talk about next week. And maybe you have a Scratchword notebook. Again, if we see the blog post, there is a blog post that is due as well, but that is just going to be due before the next project begins. So you have a little bit of extra time to do that. And I'll talk more about the blog post next week after the project is due. Okay. Any questions before I move into setting up your project? All right, so repository setup, all of the instructions are here in the guidelines doc. So I'm gonna do this and then reshare my screen so that I'll do this side by side. So instructions here. And then I'm gonna reshare side by side. Okay, awesome. So to set up your repo, only one person per pair or team needs to do this part. So what you're gonna do is on GitHub, you're going to create a new repository, no template, and give your repository a name. You can call it whatever you want. Don't call it phase 1 project. Don't call it Flatiron School movie project. Call it something that's more indicative of what the project is. So maybe I want to call it Microsoft movie analysis. Cool, available. That's all good. Make sure it's public because I need to be able to see it as well. And these steps, we're going to add a README file, more about that next week. We're also going to add a gitignore with the template Python. And I'll talk a little bit about what a gitignore is in a little bit, but you need a Python gitignore, and we are going to create this repository. Okay, so now we have a completely empty GitHub repository. Great. Before we move on, there are some things that we want to do. If you're working with other people, which all of you are, you want to add your teammate as collaborators. So the way that you do that, you go into settings, manage access, and you have to put in your password. And then you invite your collaborator. So ask for your teammate's GitHub username or their GitHub email. And from that, you'll be able to add your collaborators. So after that, one more step before you clone your repo is you're going to edit your gitignore. So what a gitignore is it basically ignores files from your computer as they get pushed up to GitHub. For example, if you might have seen that as you, let me see, where is PyCache? Okay. So very often when you're working in a Jupyter notebook, you may or may not have come across this yet, but automatically your PyCache is created on your local machine, which is great. It actually is what allows you to back up what your Jupyter notebook is working on. If you have like IPYMB checkpoints, I think that's one of them that's here as well. Oh, I guess it's not in here yet, but all of these junk files are not useful on your GitHub. These are just computer generated files or files that don't need to belong in a GitHub repository. It basically will make your GitHub repository look more cluttered, so therefore you ignore them. How this works is Git will look through all of these file names, and then if any of your files or folders match these, it won't get pushed to GitHub on purpose, which is sometimes a good thing. One big thing that people run into is sometimes your data files can get very, very big. GitHub does have a limit of 100 megabytes. So if you have any very large files, you do want to add their name into the gitignore. But to start, I would say edit your gitignore and add these things. So these are things that are not in the Python default gitignore by GitHub. So all you have to do is click edit the gitignore and just add them to the bottom. If you have any data files or folders that you want to ignore, add them here. You can just add them as a new line. Let's say you have like a, I don't know, new data.csv. That is a giant data file. Just throw the name in there and you are done. You can commit your changes here. So once that is done, you and all of your team members can then clone your GitHub repository. So what you can do here, you can clone. Let me pull up my terminal real quick. Over here. And in my terminal, I'm going to just throw it on my desktop for now and git clone that. Reminder, at this stage, because you and your teammates are the main people who are working on this project, you do not need to fork this project. So don't need to fork this because this is your project. You can all just work on the original copy of the data. So I did not need to fork it. So now I can cd into my Microsoft Movie Analysis folder, and I have my README file. This is a good opportunity to talk about if you want to edit your gitignore after you've cloned it, you can actually do that here as well. If you ls, you'll see that I only have the README here, but by default, there are actually all of these hidden files, which is pretty interesting. So let me zoom in a little bit more so it's clearer. If I do ls-a, you can see that more things turn up. One of the things is actually the gitignore. Any file that starts with a period is a secret file, so it doesn't show up when you do ls, but the gitignore is there. So if I wanted to edit the gitignore, what I can do is do like an open gitignore, and you'll see that that opens my gitignore right here. I can actually add more files in my gitignore if I want to in the future. Also, you'll see that this .git appears here. Do not delete this, whatever you do. I guess you can, and you can always fix it later, but this .git file is actually what tells your computer, or it tells Git that this folder is a GitHub repository. So if I open up .git, you'll see that this .git folder has all of your information. Like it has your info, your description. I guess none of this is important right now, but it just tells Git that this is a repository. This is actually the file that it looks for to do Git actions. So if I were to like cd out and look at my desktop, if I did like Git status, my desktop is obviously not a Git repository. So it looks for that .git file. That's something that's good to know. All right, so back in this Microsoft Movie Analysis, what I can now do is launch my Jupyter notebook. And let's hope that it launches in this one. Let's launch our Jupyter notebook. Damn, I wanted it to be here. Okay, here we go. And I can create my new notebook. And then maybe I call it data cleaning or something like that. So I have my data cleaning notebook, but we still don't have our data files, right? So what I want you all to do to get your data files is clone the project repository. So on this project page from Canvas, if you click onto the Octocat, you can actually see that the zip data is all in here, 11 data files. So you can do is just clone this over. Let me pull this up again, create a new tab of my terminal. Let's not do that in here. And let's do a git clone of my project repository. Cool. Now, once that is done, I can do this the lazy way. This is my desktop, and this is the project, and my zip data is all here. What I can do is grab my zip data, copy it, and paste it into my movie analysis. So just like that, my zip data is in my folder. So if I look back at my page here, the zip data files are here. So really quick, let's just open up a file to see how that works. Let's just start with, I don't know, this one. All right, so we're just gonna quickly import pandas. Of course, you're gonna import other things, but this just to start. And we'll have df equals to pd.read csv and file name. And because this is inside a zip data folder, you have to make sure to do zip data / file name. And just like that, I have my data. So up to you to decide with your project partners how you want to do this data exploration phase. You could maybe split up. Some of you look at some data, some at the others. Maybe you want to do this together as a team. Up to you. But this is how you can get started working on your data files. All right. So now to talk about collaboration, but before that, any questions at this stage? Because I do want to talk about methods of collaboration. Okay. API keys, I'm going to talk about that on Thursday, whenever we talk about topic 9. Yeah, Thursday. So I'll talk about that more on Thursday, and this part will make sense then. This is only if you decide to use an API for this project, so don't worry about this now. Okay, so to collaborate, there are 2 ways you can do it. One with branches and one without branches. I'll start with without branches. So without branches, I will say one big tip is each person have your own Jupyter notebook. The reason for that is Jupyter notebooks in raw form are actually very, very messy because they are JSON files. I think I talked about this before. Let's just look at an example here. We have this student file here, which feel free to use if you like. But if you look at the raw format of a Jupyter notebook, it is actually a file like this. Every time, despite the fact that you don't change any code, if you just run a cell, the file changes. So merging and what's the word? Yeah, merging your changes and updating your changes from different people is going to be very, very difficult. So that's why I recommend, especially if you're working not with branches, to make sure that you each work on your own notebooks, and then maybe at the very end you come together and put your work together into one clean notebook. So there's that. Without branches, the most important thing is to communicate with each other when you're pushing material to make sure that no conflicting material gets pushed. Basically, at the very least, tell your project partner when you're going to Git push material, so your project partner is able to Git pull your material so that everyone has the most up-to-date material at all times. That's very, very important, especially if you're working without branches. Branches was discussed in the curriculum back in topic 2, and I didn't really get into it, so I'll get into it now. A very, very common way to work if you're working on a project with multiple people is with branches. So there's a couple ways to make branches. You can do it locally, which is fine, but everyone just do it off of GitHub. I think that's slightly easier. So let's just say we have a few members, one of them being me. So what you can do is create a new branch. I like to do it off GitHub because it's the easiest. And a typical standard way of naming your branches is your name dash work in progress WIP. So just like this, it creates this branch. Whenever you create the branch, it basically takes a copy of your main branch, enters into your own branch. And then if you're working on your own branch, the main branch won't get affected at all. only once you think that, okay, the stuff that's on my work in progress branch is good to go, it's all final, then you can apply those changes onto your main branch. So that's a very, very standard process of working on stuff. So I created my branch here on Jupyter, on GitHub, and you can do that for all of your teammates if you like as well. And then what you have to do is you have to pull your branch onto your local machine. So the way to do that, first, definitely make sure that you're in your repo. So I'm in Microsoft Movie Analysis here, and I honestly don't remember off the top of my head, so I have to check. Okay. So you got to do a git fetch first to just fetch your branches. So when I did git fetch, it found that there is a new branch. Great. And then for each branch that you want to have locally, you do git checkout branch name. So we do git checkout ish work in progress. There we go. So now I am on a new branch ish work in progress. So let's do some branching commands. Git checkout basically allows you to switch branches. I've also noted them down. Where did I put it? Git branch. Oh, here, yeah. Git checkout branch name to switch. And git branch basically shows you all the branches that you have. So on this repo, I have the main branch and my work in progress branch. And to switch between branches, you just do git checkout. So I can go back to my main, git checkout main. I'm back on the main branch, and I can check that by doing git branch. So the main is now highlighted. And let me just go back to my work in progress. Okay, so now I'm on my work in progress branch. I can double check that again by doing git branch, and that is there. If you're working on Z shell, if anyone is on a Mac and your terminal language is Z shell, it's a little bit different. I forget what it is, but if a code doesn't work that you think it should, just Google it. You'll probably find something. But okay. So let's say I'm working on my branch, and it's very important, especially if you're switching branches, to you should not have any windows open while you're switching branches. That's actually something that I should not have done. But let me close this out real quick. And on my original branch, you can actually see that everything is still there. Good. Okay. So let's do something real quick. Let's launch Jupyter Notebook. And this one is redundant, so let's go on this one. So I have my data cleaning there. Great. Let's see, this is still open. Let me just close this so it's not conflicting. All right, so let's just say I want to add some work onto this version here. So df, sure, let's say I do like df equal to, I don't know, let me just quickly do some sort of subsetting. So let's just get like primary name, birth year, death year, just as an example. Okay, I need to rerun this real quick. Okay. All right, so now I have this df here. I say, okay, cool. I'm done with my data cleaning. Let's just see what happens. So save this, close this out. Don't forget to close out of your notebook as well. And let me just check that I'm in my own branch. Great. What I can do is push my changes to my own branch. And what that's going to look like, I can just do the regular add, git commit, cleaned data, and then git push. So when I do this git add commit push, it's going to take a while because of all of these files. Cool. Once I do this add commit push and I go back to GitHub, if I refresh this, you can see that my work in progress branch has my changes if they will load. Let's see. Sometimes GitHub takes a little while. Okay, but let's look at the raw, and we can see that there's basically stuff there. So I have my data frame here. At the end, it also has the fact that I subsetted it to primary name, birth year, death year. So my changes are there. What's great about this is that on the main branch, oh no, what happened here? On the main branch, there we go. That hasn't been edited yet. It doesn't even have my zip data yet. So cool. So at this point, all of my changes, and if you have multiple people working on different branches, you don't have to worry about the changes conflicting. So that's a good thing. So you can just work on your own branches, communicate with each other. That's super important. And yeah, as you're working in your branches. Let's just say you're working on all of the data cleaning, and then you just want to put your work together, maybe onto the main branch, just so you can treat it as like a save point. Let's see, I have that here somewhere as well. When you want to put your work together, you basically want to do a pull request to merge your branches together. That's a good thing to do maybe like when you're done with a big process, like maybe all of your data cleaning is done and you want to like combine all of your like clean CSVs or like your cleaned data files or your analysis results, so on and so forth. Okay. There's also a bunch of other things that are good to read, but I don't want to go through every single thing here. So make your way through this doc slowly over the week. But okay, let's just say my work in progress branch is completely done on my part. And I say, okay, I'm happy with all these changes I want. I want to take these notebooks and throw them onto the main branch now. So this button's already here. If this button isn't here, you can go on to pull requests and create a new pull request. So the way that pull requests work is you want to compare something to your base, and your base should be your main branch. So we're going to compare my work in progress branch to the main branch. And automatically, GitHub will show you the differences, which is pretty neat. For example, it'll show you that in my data cleaning notebook, everything is new, everything is green. If there are like differences or things that I've deleted, you'll see that it'll be like some red, some green. So all of this is new. I also have all of these new files as well. So great. All of these changes we're going to merge. So this is able to merge, these branches can be automatically merged. If something is not able to merge, it could be that you have a Jupyter notebook file that you made one small change to that affected the entire notebook. Let me know if that happens. And also, oh, right, yeah. So that's the reason why I think that every person should work on their own Jupyter notebook. But anyways, once you're able to merge, you can create the pull request. My go-to advice is just follow the green buttons. So here we have our pull request. If you want to write a comment about your pull request, you can as well. And you create it. And once the pull request is done, you can actually merge it. And so it says no conflicts with the base branch. Great. If I merge the pull request, confirm the merge. Basically, it says that the work in progress branch can now be safely deleted because now all of the information that was new on the work in progress branch has now been placed onto my main branch. So that's great. So this branch is now redundant. So we can delete. If I go back to the code here, you can see that now only the main branch remains. If you want to branch out again, maybe now you want to make visualizations, you want to branch out again, you can create new branches from there if you would like, if you think it's necessary. So that is a standard way to collaborate. I know that the branching can be a lot for some people. So if you don't want to work on branches for this first project, that is fine. But for the next project, I'm going to have you all work on branches. Any questions about this? I know that's a lot, but yes, any questions? Okay, I will tell you that working with Git and GitHub, especially with branches, especially while collaborating, it is definitely a learning process. You will probably definitely run into issues along the way. If you're not sure about anything, rather than trying to brute force it, feel free to let me know. So yeah. Okay, what else? So about deadlines and what the submission of this project is going to look like. So a few different deadlines for this project. First, your presentation will be next Friday. And I'll tell you more about what that presentation is going to look like next week. But basically, you can pretend that I am the head of Microsoft's new movie studio and you're trying to present your insights to me. So that happens next Friday. In terms of your other deliverables, I don't need them to be done by Friday. They just need to be done before your review. So what's going to happen is there's a review period of 2 weeks after the presentation. For us, it'll be the 14th to the 25th of June. And during this time, you will schedule a one-on-one with me to review your project and review your code. This will be done on an individual basis. So even though you're working in teams of 2 or 3, you're going to schedule your own one-on-one with me where we'll talk about your project. And this can happen anytime from the 14th to the 25th. So in terms of deadline, when you need to submit the project on Canvas, which is a process that I'll also talk about next week, your submission just has to be the day before your review. Because you're working in a pair or teams of 3, probably you're not going to get reviewed on the same day. So it just has to be the day before the first person has their review, if that makes sense. I will clarify all of these details later on as well. So these are what all these dates mean. In terms of these dates, these are just my suggestions for just rough parts of the project. I would say data cleaning is most of the work that you'll be doing for this project, especially if you choose to work off of the existing CSVs. I would say take a whole week to do it if you want. Analyses done by the 10th, other deliverables, maybe the 11th, maybe whenever your due date is. If you would like to see examples, I've linked a bunch of examples at the bottom. So at the bottom of this, I've linked some examples of presentations, of READMEs, and these I will actually go through next week as well. But this is a YouTube recording of one of my last year's cohort's presentations, if you want to look at those. So feel free to look at that. So yeah, any other project questions as I scroll to here and I see if I need to mention anything else? Okay. In terms of formulating your analysis, try to commit at least once a day on average onto GitHub. I will tell you that even till the capstone phase, I have a lot of students forgetting to commit on GitHub, and then one day something happens to their computer and they lose all their work. So therefore, try and commit to GitHub as much as possible. It's just a good place to save your work. In terms of what I mean by answer 4 or 5 questions, basically, I want to see 4 or 5 business insights. If you're in a group of 2, at least 4. If you're in a group of 3, at least 5. So yeah, in terms of questions, it can really vary. It can really be like, let's say you want to look at the best month to release movies. That one insight of the best month to release movies, maybe in the form of visualization or multiple visualizations, you can present that as a single question. Like, what is the best month to release a movie? Or what's the best genre? That can be a different question. Or what is the most profitable budget range or something like that? It's really up to you to get creative and think about what you want to analyze for this project. Also very dependent on the data that you have and the data that you choose to work on. In terms of resources for data, I have linked some APIs to work with here. I know that we don't talk about APIs until Thursday, so up to you to take this time and decide on whether you would like to work with, if you would like to work with the data that was provided, or if you want to try your hand at getting data that's maybe more up to date or cleaner, up to you. And I'm more than happy to talk about these during one-on-ones. Okay, I think one last note, because a lot of these other details I'll be mentioning throughout the rest of this week as well as next week. One last detail, in terms of this week's one-on-ones, if you want to do your one-on-one together with your project teammates, go ahead. Yeah, you can definitely do that. One of you just needs to schedule a one-on-one and then send your project partners the link, and then that works. I'm more than happy to talk to multiple people at once during your one-on-one, especially this week and next week or whenever you're working on a project. Cool. Yeah, more details will come over this week and next week as well. So no need to rush into it too much. I will say that this project is a 1 week long project, but I'm giving you all about a week and a half. So yeah, you have a little bit more time to slowly get used to the data, figure out how you want to work with your teammates, so on and so forth. Any questions? All right. One last thing I want to talk about is things to consider when working with multiple people. I think Dara posted on the channel at some point what is called the Pomodoro technique. Let me look it up real quick. Pomodoro technique, that's a really, really good one, especially if you're working in teams, to just, split the work evenly. It is a technique that's very commonly used in software engineering, but definitely applies to data science as well. So basically, especially because with these kinds of projects, it's not easy to work on many things simultaneously. It's very much like, okay, you got to work on this thing and then pass the results along to what I'm working on and the pass the results of so on and so forth. Pomodoro technique is something that you can kind of adapt to your workflow. So the idea of this is, let's say you set up like a 2-hour Zoom call to work on your project. Think of some time intervals, and typically it's what, 20 to 25 minutes. Yeah, traditionally 25 minutes, where you switch off who codes what. So what you could do is maybe use this to practice your Git skills as well. Maybe for 25 minutes, one person is coding, and then you push your work up, and then the other person pulls it down and works on the thing for the next 25 minutes. That could be something that you include in your workflow. But figuring out how to work as a team is also part of figuring out how to work on this project. So if anyone would like any more advice, or if you're finding it difficult to collaborate, feel free to let me know. I do have a lot of advice on how you can do that effectively. Cool. Anything else? Great. I think at this time, it's a good idea to start exploring the data. Don't feel like you have to start with your analysis right away. This project is going to be a very back and forth process on formulating your analysis questions and looking at your data. Maybe based on the data, you have to change some of your analysis questions. Maybe because of the way you're changing analysis questions, you might want to change the way that you're cleaning your data. So it's a very, very back and forth process. I cannot stress enough how important it is to keep communicating with your project partners during this time. Yeah, let me see, what else do I want to mention? Yeah, a lot of the details are going to come throughout this week and next week. So I don't want to overwhelm you all. Spend this time reading through the guidelines, reading through a lot of the provided material. Maybe you just look at the data to see what you're given, and you can start making decisions from there. All right, I think that's all I had to share. If there's anything more, if anyone is having difficulty setting up the GitHub, please let me know. If anyone has not heard from their project partners by the end of today, let me know as well, because it is important that you are communicating. So yeah, keep me updated. Don't be afraid to Slack me if you need anything at all. All right, any final questions before we wrap up for today? Nothing? Okay, well, tomorrow we go back to topic 8, 9, 10. Tomorrow will be 8, Thursday is 9, Friday is 10. I've put some stuff on the homeroom to just know what to prioritize during this time. You may or may not choose to incorporate that stuff with this project. Cool. All right, well, if there's nothing else, I will talk to you all tomorrow. Again, let me know if your project partners are not getting back to you by the end of today. And yeah, I'll see you all back here tomorrow. Bye, everybody.